The purpose of this screencast video is to illustrate how we create a financial viability appraisal for a fairly straightforward housing development using the Development Viability Model, or DVM, that has been commissioned by local planning authorities in the regions of Mid, South West and South East Wales. For more complex development scenarios, which include those involving an element of commercial or investment property, you should refer to the main user guide that can be downloaded from the local authority's website. It is best to have a copy of the user guide at hand anyway, just in case you had a problem when creating your appraisal. Planning Policy Wales Edition 10 expects anyone promoting a new housing site as a candidate for inclusion in a local development plan to be able to show that it is financially viable for the proposed development to meet the planning policy requirements of the plan. The DVM has been created to facilitate this process and to assist dialogue between landowners, developers, planning authorities and other stakeholders. It is based in Microsoft Excel to make it accessible to as wide a number of users as possible. When you open the Excel file that you have received from your local planning authority, this is what you should see on your computer screen. If not, you may need to click on the Project tab at the bottom of your screen. Next to the Project tab, you will see another tab marked Quick Guide. This includes a shortened and simplified version of the main user guide if you want to refer to that at any time. The local authority has already filled out the site address, local authority name and site reference code on rows 8 and 10. These entries cannot be changed. This first screencast video is primarily about completing the rest of the project sheet. This will define your development proposal and determine the additional worksheets that the DVM creates for your appraisal. You must complete all the fields marked with an asterisk and for which the title or description has an orange background. Your entries are made in the cells with a yellow background. All other cells have Excel protection on them, and you will get a message telling you that if you try to enter anything in a cell that is protected and which is therefore not available for any entry. Some of the yellow cells already have a default entry in them, in blue text. You can leave those entries as they are, or overwrite them with an entry of your own. Here is the project sheet completed for a new development of 120 dwellings. I want to draw your attention to the following steps that are numbered on the screen. Firstly, the total or gross area of my site is 10 acres, which I've entered in cell D16. When I enter 10 in that cell, the DVM automatically shows me the gross area in hectares in B16. If I'd chosen to enter the gross area in hectares at B16, the DVM would have given me the equivalent acreage in D16. We need to be consistent though. Having entered a gross area in acres, I must enter the net developable area in acres too, not in hectares. In this case, I've entered 8 in D17, and the DVM has not only given me the equivalent area in hectares in B17, but has also calculated the net to gross ratio in H17. My development does not include any non-residential or investment property, so on row 18 I leave the default settings at 0. Moving on to point 2, you'll find that 2 of the entries on the project sheet have to be made using a drop-down menu. The first of these is in cell B20, where I've selected ACG band 3 based on the location of my site. The other is in cell B24, where I have selected existing use plus premium, and I've entered the site value that I consider corresponds to that definition in B23. I have also changed the default setting in B22 from 48 to 40 dwellings per annum as being the rate at which I expect to sell the open market units on this site. My third point is that you must tick the little box marked residential in C28 if your development includes any housing. If you don't, the DVM will not provide you with any worksheets on which to set up your house types and housing mix. However, because my development in this case does not have any non-residential elements, I've left cell H28 blank. Before we move on, please note that alongside the red number 4 on the right of your screen, there are various default settings which enable the DVM to calculate such things as fees, contingencies, and finance costs in your appraisal. Any of these settings can be changed by the user, so check that they're appropriate to your case, as these settings can vary from one scheme to another. For example, if your project is based on standard house types, for which designs have already been created and used elsewhere, the percentage allowance for professional fees in your development is likely to be less than for a project with a more bespoke design. Please also note that alongside number 5, there is a square button with a question mark on it. This Help button is available on most of the worksheets in the DVM. If you click on it, notes will appear listing actions that need to be taken on the page you are working in. When you have completed all the mandatory fields on the project sheet, save the file as a macro-enabled workbook with whatever name you're giving your project. Then click the Validate button at the top of the screen to move to the next stage, which I'll run through in the next Resi Overview screencast.